There's a very popular verse at the start of John's third epistle where he says in the King James Version, "Beloved, I wish above all things that you may prosper and be in health, even as your soul prospers." This verse has spawned a worldwide revival that probably surpasses in numbers more than any other revival in the history of Christendom. Even those who rail against the teaching which has grown out of this verse, a teaching that is often called the prosperity gospel, the critics often show the same motivations themselves, albeit on a little less grand scale. And virtually every denomination still displays some kind of links with this teaching, including the presence of prosperity gospel publications in their bookstores. So is this verse saying that what God, or at least what John, wanted for all Christians was lots of money? Let me start by saying that the key to prosperity really lies in understanding what prosperity is. Like the word success, which may very well be the best synonym for prosperity, it can mean many different things according to how it is applied. In the verse itself, there is mention of one's soul prospering. Now, there are different opinions even on what the word soul means, but let's just say it means that part of us which lives on eternally. In that case, we might say that our soul might prosper through living on in heaven rather than living on eternally in hell. John also implies that our bodies prosper through health. So how do we as Christians prosper, apart from good health and inheriting eternal life with God? Before I answer that, tell me how an apple tree would prosper. Wouldn't it prosper by having lots of apples? You see, you just have to look at what it was made to do. People have assumed that we human beings prosper by having lots of material possessions or by having a lot of money. If that's what we were created for, then it would be true. But this is not what God put us on this earth to do. And until we take the time to listen to God speaking to us through His Son, we are never going to know or experience true prosperity, the kind of really satisfying prosperity that He intends for each of us to have. I could write a whole book on all the evidence there is that people who have achieved material prosperity are not happy. They continue to focus on their bodies, often going to ridiculous lengths to make themselves look younger and younger, despite the reality that we are growing older and older. They get more and more useless toys to prove that they are better than others. They fight with each other over wealth. They destroy their lives through alcoholism and drugs. Their marriages still end in disaster after disaster. And much like the rest of us, there are many, many more who appear to be doing just fine, at the same time that inwardly they, and let's be honest, we too, are still dissatisfied, living lives of quiet desperation, as one writer put it. So what were we put here for? How should we measure success as human beings? Here it is, in the very first verse from that great Sermon on the Mount recorded in Matthew's Gospel. Pretty much like everything Jesus ever taught, it is a radical departure from our normal human assumptions. Jesus says, blessed. Some translations just say happy. But today, let's say prosperous. Prosperous are those who are poor in spirit. What? Blessed are the poor in spirit, you say? No way! For many of us, this sounds like a lie from the devil, trying to ruin all the fun that we could have if only we were rich, or at least if we could have a little more blessing, as we say, by God. But hear me out. Think about this. Have you ever gone hunting or fishing or camping out? There are millions of people who do this every year as soon as they can get away from their jobs. Why would anybody enjoy doing something like that when they could just buy a big steak or sleep in a luxury hotel instead? It's because something in our nature recognizes, subconsciously mind you, that there is a freedom that comes from being able to catch a fish all by yourself and prepare a tasty meal from it. Now that right there is a very good illustration of the satisfaction that can come from being poor in spirit. Consider how little satisfaction comes from trying to get more and more. Someone once asked John Rockefeller, the richest man in the world at the time, how much money it would take to make the average person happy, and he replied, ever so wisely, just a little bit more. You see, while we assume that a little more will bring us happiness, security, long life, popularity, and more, somehow everything we buy falls short of our expectations. And the more we get, the more paranoid we become about losing it and about others trying to take it away from us. Nah, the key to happiness, the key to prosperity, is not to be found in getting more. It only comes as we learn how to live on a little less. Knowing that you can catch a fish, or make fire, or knit a sweater, or build a shelter with your own hands from the most basic materials is where real liberation comes from. The less we can learn to live on, the more invincible we become. No one can take that prosperity away from us because it's internal and not external. Blessed are the poor in spirit. Now in Luke's Gospel, Jesus is recorded as having just said, "Blessed are the poor." Certainly there is little difference between being poor and being poor in spirit. You see, to the extent that you have learned to embrace poverty, it makes little difference whether you have things or not. But I still prefer what Matthew records as Jesus having said, "Blessed are the poor in spirit." I prefer it because I've seen a lot of poor people who are not at all poor in spirit. And they can be some of the most miserable people in the world. Not happy with what they have, but not ambitious enough to do anything about changing it either. Just jealous and bitter all the time. Such people are a long way from being prosperous. But it's not because they're poor. It's because they have the same stifling, greedy spirit that the richest billionaire has, and it is never going to make them or anyone else happy. So that's it. A one-point sermon. You want to be happy? You want to be prosperous? Then learn to embrace poverty. Learn to live more and more simply every day. That's what we here on this channel are doing, as we have stopped working for money and as we have sold everything that we had and we pooled our resources for the purpose of going into all the world to preach the gospel. So if you'd like to work with us, write to the email address that's on screen now and share a little bit about yourself and where you live. Together we can proclaim this wonderful gospel of truly Christian prosperity in all the world. I look forward to hearing from you today.